Our final story tonight centres on a computer like this. This is a BBC Model B dating back to 1984. Today, of course, we use our computers to send email messages or to communicate with each other via the internet. But 12 years ago, such technology was still a thing of the future. Now, machines like these couldn't be connected to a network, and to store information from them, you had to use a floppy disk like this. So, when Ken, an economics teacher, and his girlfriend Debbie said that messages were appearing on their BBC computer at home, there seemed to be no conventional explanation. Even more so when the writer of the messages claimed to be living in another time. Ken and Debbie have helped with the making of this film, although they chose not to appear, so we've dramatised their story. It's in 2 parts, with a conclusion next week.
Coffee.
Ken, come here.
How strangely you speak. Though I must confess that I've also been badly educated. You're a worthy man who has a fanciful woman, and you live in my house. Since your half-witted fool ripped my house apart, I've had trouble sleeping. It was a great shame that you stole my house.
Ken!
Lucas.
When did you type this?
I haven't touched it.
Well, I certainly didn't. What's it supposed to mean?
Well, it's a school computer. There could be anything on it.
But I'm sure this was empty.
Looks like Shakespeare. Oh, come on, we'll look at it tomorrow. I haven't got a clue where it came from. Unless somebody broke in and typed it.
Well, anything missing?
No. He left more than he took.
Yeah. Well, at first glance, I would say it was Middle English.
Chaucer.
Don't recognise it.
Well, is it definitely medieval?
Well, I could always check the vocabulary in the OED, I suppose.
Ah, that'd be great. Thanks, Peter.
Why don't you leave them a message? Try and catch them out.
Come on then, what else shall I type?
Ask him who the king is. Ask him how old the king is. Ask him how does he write to us.
Okay.
The king, of course, is Henry VIII, who is 46 years old.
46. Born in 1500. That means Lucas is writing from 1546.
What is this strange box of lights that makes the writing?
Quite a correspondence you're having with this Lucas. Somebody's pulling a hoax. They're doing a damn good job. The language is spot on for 1546.
Can you be that accurate?
If you're a good linguist, yeah. Mind you, he's making some historical errors. He says he went to Jesus College, Oxford. Well, Jesus College didn't exist in 1546. It was founded 30 years later.
Well, thank God for that. So it is a hoax?
And what's all this about a tiger?
Oh, he means my Jag. I left a picture of it by the computer. The bugger's nicked it.
Maybe you've got a poltergeist, Ken. You get them a lot in old houses where there's been building work, especially if there's a sensitive young woman in the house and it's on a ley line. Are you on a ley line, Ken?
I don't know. So are we on a ley line or not?
Right smack on top of one, actually.
You're really beginning to believe in Lucas, aren't you?
Well, I guess so. We could have an open line to somebody living 400 years ago. I know how that sounds, but just think about it for a moment.
Wonder if he'd like a cup of tea. Bloody hell.
My friend, pray what strange demon are you? I'm so confused. I feel you are good, but your lies frighten me. You said you're alive, but this is not so. If you were alive, you would say you know not of Jesus College. My college was Brasenose, from whence I was expelled for not deleting the Pope's name. If you don't explain your ignorance to me, then I must make an end to my words with you. This would cause me much despair. Lucas.
We didn't challenge him about Jesus College. He was testing us. He thinks we are the hoaxers.
Peter!
Morning. Are you okay?
Yeah.
So what happens next?
Peter, do you believe in ghosts?
Oh, I've never seen one.
You're still checking out the Oxford connection, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm going to see the librarian at Brasenose tomorrow. And you could check the Society for Psychical Research. I doubt whether they've come across a computer haunting before.
I'll start by checking the names on the roll for that period and see if I can find you your Lucas.
Intriguing, isn't it? I'm pretty sure the language and content are completely authentic. Mind you, if you spot any anachronisms, I'd be grateful for the details.
I have your phone number. Oh, by the way, if you hear from him again, ask him if he's got any overdue library books.
I did see a fair maid who came suddenly to me. I was surely frightened to see her so appear. She briefly caught my sight, her gaze admitting love. "What do you want?" asked she. My lips could not respond. Her beauty had stolen my breath away. But then, as she had come, she went, and I was left in that dim firelight, with naught save her golden memory.
Thomas Harden, Dean of Brasenose, 1536. Expelled for failure to expunge the Pope's name.
Lucas says he's been using an alias. He says he's afraid for his soul if he uses his real name, which is Thomas?
Thomas Harden.
Well done, Robin.
Hang on, there's more. He says the sheriff will take him to trial and execution within 7 days unless he can explain the Leam's voice, that's the box of lights, that's appeared in his house. They must think he's been dabbling in witchcraft.
If they think he's a witch, they'll burn him at the stake, won't they?
He hasn't finished yet. Jesus, I don't believe this. He says, you say you're from 1985. I thought you were from 2109, like your friend who bought me my box of lights.
2109? Dear God, you mean he's getting messages from our future?
That seems to be what it means.
Peter, send them a message.
I don't think that's a very good idea.
We can't help Thomas. Perhaps they can. If you won't do it, I will.
Well, I'm sorry we didn't get any messages from either the past or the future. That's about par for the course.
Doesn't the SBR ever find anything?
I wouldn't say that. We quite often detect an obvious fraud, but when nothing at all happens, there's not much we can do. Perhaps they burned your Lucas.
We have to be careful. You know, science says this is simply not possible. I didn't say it was possible. I just said it happened. I can't believe he's dead.
If Thomas was in prison, he wouldn't be able to communicate, would he?
That's a good point. There must be something we can do.
You've changed your tune.
Maybe I have.
And 2109?
No, I can't say I'm sorry not to hear from them. Oh, come on. Let's go to the pub.
Ken,
What?
there's a message, a long one.
Ken, Deb, Peter.
Thomas, he's alive.
I don't know. I think it's from 2109.
You'll have two choices. One, that we explain this experiment, but cause what should not be to happen. Or two, understand that you have a purpose that shall change the face of history. We, 2109, must not affect you directly, but guide you and allow room for your own destiny.
That's bullshit.
Calm down.
Calm down. Thomas is in trouble. Might even be dead. We've got a computer that's doing Star Trek impressions. I don't believe in destiny and all that crap.
It makes a kind of sense. We're Thomas's future, they're our future.
They? Who are they?
What is our name? Too perfect that we make mistakes. As we must have a character. A movement that casts no shadows. Thought without chemical reaction. Love without passion. Hate without anger. Wars without lives lost. How can we have a name? We are many, but no more than one at a time to come.
You know the last message we thought was from Thomas? You mean it's not? A man called Falshurst. Falshurst? Who's he?
Remember the sheriff? It's him. Here's the translation.
Lucas didn't cry for mercy before the court. Instead, he said the box of lights could only have come from God. But I ask you, are you demons?
You checked him out?
Absolutely. According to the records, Falshurst was involved in some kind of conspiracy against the king.
And he's still the sheriff?
Well, they don't know about it yet.
But if they did, he'd be drop right in it, wouldn't he? Will you do it, Peter? You're better at the lingo than I am.
He's answered.
My most noble Peter, if you swear not to use your power, then I shall free Lucas within the hour.
Peter did it. It worked.
I beg your forgiveness, but I meant him no harm. I shall do this, for you are my friends.
What a creep.
My good friends, I do weep so much that I can be with my friends again. It's a pity that I can't hold you to my breast. I know you as well as my own family since your time opened up to me. But I must move on soon. It's best, since the people of Dawdleston no fear me. Thomas.
Without knowledge, you have fear. With fear, you create your own nightmares.
Dad?
2109. We are not in control of poltergeist activity. We are not here to play games. We are tachyons. We watch and react accordingly in the vertical plane. The flower reaches too high and withers in the burning light. Safe are the bodies of the silent world. We are stopping the communication with Thomas.
Babe, you will stay with Thomas all night. I have a new mattress and new blankets on my bed. Come. Sit here with me, pretty Debbie. Don't be affrighted. Be cold. Your perfume haunts my house. Your hand, softer than any fair hand. You'd be unreal. Not only for your unnatural beauty, but also that you make me 400 years too old for you, mate. One day, Debbie will know Thomas as nothing but history. Am I to live knowing nothing else? Forgive me, Debbie. I am but foolish.
Before you could run, you could walk. I'm fascinated that 2109 claims to be composed entirely of tachyons.
Whatever they are.
Well, they're theoretical, or rather conjectural, particles without mass. They can travel faster than the speed of light.
Yes, so?
Well, if they can travel faster than the speed of light, they can travel through time.
I've set up the new test. I've typed in a list of questions for 2109, which only I know. We'll seal the kitchen for 1 hour, then I'll erase the questions, okay? If you get an answer, then you'll have some proof.
So what can we do?
I want all three of you to stay in here where we can see you, please.
You still think we're having you on?
Deb.
John,
Certain words from that time are only used at certain places and at certain times. It takes me weeks to cross-check the language on one of these, and they come every day. It'd take months to compose one of these from scratch. How can it be a hoax?
We have a routine to follow.
Or does it answer the questions or not?
Your 2109 obviously knew what the questions were. I think we'd like you to send them another message.
So they're a bit less smug about it than they were then, are they?
Not before time. John's asked us to ask them another question. The solution to Fermat's last theorem.
What's that?
It's a complicated mathematical puzzle. Never been solved. I left it on the screen for you.
We wonder how much David would like the answer to this question if he knew the consequences. We know your deepest fear. Before we tell you, do you swear to grant us a wish?
And I wrote that back. If it be in our power so to do, and that we do not lose our bodies, minds and souls to you.
Is that it? Did you drag us down here for this?
Then let the man who is willing to lose these step forward.
No death.
Come on, John. You've never believed any of it anyway. You do it.
My true fellows and sweet maid, I go now to Oxford to write my book about my brothers and maid, and of our love for each other. I shall not go to my God until it is written. I write this in the hope that my dear friends will one day find this book. For on that day our lands may not be so distant, and we shall all be truly embraced across the centuries. Thomas.
It's a fascinating tale. Dr. Richard Wiseman went to see Ken, Debbie and Peter Trinder to try to find some answers.
This case is impressive because we have some hard evidence to examine. Between 200 and 300 messages apparently written by a man in 1546. Clearly there are only two options. Either the messages are genuine or they're not, and if they're not, then it's a hoax. I spoke to Ken and Debbie about the events which took place in Meadow Cottage 10 years ago. Since then they've made new lives for themselves and don't wish to be identified.
Do you think there could be a normal explanation for what was going on?
I'm sure there will be a normal explanation, but not currently, no. I mean, I'm as puzzled as the next person as to what was happening. All I managed to do was to record what happened.
Was there one particular event that convinced you it was paranormal?
Although lots of people find the poltergeist activity interesting, what was meaningful to me was the messages, which were over 16 months, and the communication with a real person.
Ken's friend Peter Trinder was checking the messages' authenticity.
If somebody was doing this as a hoax, they would have had to do one hell of a lot of research to organise this. All right, it could have been done. Somebody spent a long time doing this in advance. But what for?
Could it have been a kind of inside job? Because yourself, Ken and Debbie had access to this information. Maybe one of the three of you was hoaxing it.
Well, if it were me, of course, yes, it would have been done. But I would know. There would be no point in the whole thing. I can honestly say it wasn't me. I mean, but you believe or you don't believe. I knew that it wasn't me. And I did not believe that it could be Ken. Of course, always from the start. That was the assumption I started with when he first gave me this strange piece of paper over the school dinner table one day and said, "Do you understand this?" And I said, "Well, let me take it home and have a look at it," knowing I got the dictionary. And I thought, well, now, this dictionary will soon prove that this is a bit of silly nonsense. But of course it didn't.
Peter has examined the words which make up the messages, but I wanted to find out if other aspects of the language might provide important clues.
Looking at the verb structure, there are things which Lucas says that would not have been said in 1546. It's true that individuals can make up individual words, but we don't make up our verbs. It's possible, or it was possible in England in 1546 to say I do, thou dost, he, she or it doth, he, she or it does. But it wasn't possible to say I doth, or he, she or it dost. Now, all the way through Lucas's messages, he mixes and messes up these suffixes with the wrong subject.
Do you think it's some kind of hoax or forgery?
Well, it's certainly, if it's meant to look like early modern English writing, it doesn't even look close.
So do you think it's a sophisticated hoax by somebody who has a background in modern English?
No, if somebody had a background in early modern English writings, their hoax would look a lot better than this. I mean, they would get their verbal inflections correct. They wouldn't choose vocabulary that came from a period long before the period that this is supposed to have been written in. They'd do it a lot better.
We've had the Lucas's messages analysed by two experts. They have said that these are definitely not from the 16th century. They are like 20th century hoaxes. They don't have the right feel about them grammatically to be from the 16th century. What would you say to that?
I'd be interested to see the detail of it. This is, of course, what you, in many ways, you'd expect this sort of reaction. I suppose there's an academic in the land who would say, this is real. Not anybody wanted to keep their position.
This is a BBC Model B, like the one that Ken and Debbie used. I used to have one myself in the 80s, and so I know what they can and cannot do. When you switch them off, all of the information in the memory is wiped, and so it seems unlikely that somebody would have planted the messages on the computer before Ken brought it home from school. With the messages, were there any occasions when it couldn't have been Ken and yourself, that somebody looked at the computer, then walked out, shut the room, kept an eye on Ken and yourself, walked back in and saw a message?
Obviously, in the beginning, we wanted to eliminate ourselves. Ken would go miles and miles away. He may be with friends. I would sit with various people. Some people I'd only met once. And they put a question on the computer, and a message came, and all the time I was in one room, never entering the room where the computer was at any time, always in view. And also, with Ken being clearly not there, it eliminated him as well.
So who could have been planting these messages? Dr. Wright suggested one way in which the language might help us find out. She compared the messages from Lucas with the descriptive passages from Ken's book. She took a 500-word sample from both Lucas and Ken and looked at how many times they used an adjective in front of a noun. Ken used one 26.6% of the time, Lucas 26% of the time. And that's not just the percentage for everyone writing around the time Ken wrote his book, 1986. She checked that by looking at some journalism and also a romantic novel, both written then. They both used adjectives in front of nouns around 32 to 35% of the time.
We've always really rather hoped for some constructive comments about it. And in the light of something I've heard today about language and about its construction being possibly similar to my own construction, this is particularly remarkable since I wasn't in the building, as I say, for something like 4/5 of the occasions when messages appeared.
It was very real, that's all I'm saying, Richard. It was very close, the kind of thing that you could not doubt. But all the time one was aware of the possibility of hoax. But if it was a hoax, by golly, it was brilliant.
It's a strange sort of question. Did you hoax it yourselves? Because we were the only people with the opportunity. But to be honest, this phenomenon has a built-in endpoint. Simply that if somebody comes across and finds Thomas's book, if somebody finds that, well, these sorts of discussions become irrelevant, and I'm really quite happy to wait until that point to sort all the finer detail out.
Richard also spoke to the 2 investigators from the Society for Psychical Research who chose not to appear on camera. They too thought it was a hoax, but had no idea how it was done.